Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alan Gerard with Balanced Weather. We're going to do a quick weather briefing on a variety of things that are going on this afternoon. I'm going to start off by talking about the severe weather in the Midwest, which has been an ongoing story today. Let's see if I can share my screen so that we can look at some weather data. So, all right, so let's start off here by taking a look at the current satellite imagery, which I always like to do because I feel like it gives you a good big picture of what's going on. So this is the current visible satellite imagery of the Midwest, and you can see here across western Indiana particularly, there's a impressive line of severe thunderstorms moving through that region. All of the little pluses and minuses you see here are lightning flashes detected by the GOES satellite. And you can see here that ahead of this line of thunderstorms, there's quite a bit of sunshine. So the atmosphere is really warming up ahead of this line of thunderstorms, and it's becoming very unstable. Plenty of instability to feed these storms. If you look back a little bit further to the west, you can see a really well-defined spin in the atmosphere. That's a low pressure system that has been developing over the last it really started developing last night as these thunderstorms came out of Oklahoma and Kansas, and has continued to intensify during the day today. And what we're seeing is we've actually been seeing two defined areas of severe weather. The first has been along this line of storms that's been evolving, starting in eastern Illinois and now moving into western Indiana. And the other has been some supercells that have developed right ahead of this spin in the atmosphere, as there's been enhanced wind shear in the atmosphere that has enabled some what we call low top supercells to develop, even though the instability back here is a little less than it is farther to the east. There have actually been several tornadoes with these supercells back in here, including one that went near or through the community of Jacksonville, Illinois, with some pretty impressive, unfortunately, debris signatures in radar as the tornado went through that area. If we look at the overall conditions right now ahead of this, we can see that there's, let me change to the CAPE. This is convective available potential energy. This is essentially showing how much instability there is in the atmosphere to support thunderstorm development. And we've got values of 2,000 to 3,000 joules across Indiana into western Ohio, and that's plenty sufficient to support very strong severe thunderstorm activity, given the shear that's being enhanced as this low pressure area is coming in from the west. Another thing I want to look at here is some of what the models are showing here with this system. And this is the high resolution model, what we call the HER model. And basically what we're looking at here is the forecast radar image from this model, and this is for like the current time right now, so it's got a pretty good handle on these thunderstorms moving across western Indiana, and with time they maintain their intensity. We have some pretty impressive Boeing features in here. This is showing where there's likely the model is showing some strong straight line winds, and this activity continues to race east into Ohio, southeast lower Michigan, and eventually begins to weaken as it moves farther east later this evening. This time here is 8 p.m. local time. This is 6 p.m. local time. If we look at what the model is showing as far as rotation in the storms, we can see basically what we're looking at here is a parameter called updraft helicity, which shows how much both upward motion and turning there is in the storm. It's basically gives us an idea of what the tornadic potential is with the thunderstorm. We're looking low down in the lowest 3 kilometers of the storm. And you can see here as we go to 2200 UTC, which is 6 p.m. local time, that the radar, or excuse me, the model is showing several rotating storms within this band of severe storms as it's moving across Indiana. So we definitely expect the potential for tornadoes to continue to be embedded in this activity. And in fact, some of the models are suggesting that the low-level wind shear will increase as the storms get more into northeast Indiana and northwest Ohio. So the threat could actually increase a bit as we go into the evening, early evening hours, and the storms move closer to the Ohio-Indiana state line and potentially even up into southeastern lower Michigan. Additionally, these storms look like they're going to have significant straight line wind damage potential as well. I'm actually going to go in here a little closer so we can see this a little better, because it is, the damaging downburst winds tend to be fairly localized enough that it's really kind of hard to see when you're looking at that bigger regional image. So if we look down low, we can see here, or down low, excuse me, up closer, we can see some pockets within the line. The model is showing some pockets of 70-mile-an-hour winds and fairly widespread strong winds as it's coming through central Indiana, and then continues to have strong winds as it moves into southern lower Michigan. We can see still pockets of 60 to 70-mile-an-hour winds being forecast by the model, and that continues into western Ohio and parts of northern Kentucky. So if we look at what's going on right now with these storms, let's let the radar catch up here. We can see the line of severe storms is starting to approach the Indianapolis area from the west. And if we look at this is the image on the right here is the velocity data. And we can see here to the southwest of Indianapolis, the radar is showing a pretty large area of 70 to 80-mile-an-hour winds, even some pockets of 90-mile-an-hour winds. Now we're looking up at about probably 4,000 to 5,000 feet up at this distance from the radar. So all of this wind is likely not making it to the surface, but even up here closer to the radar, we can see pockets of up to 70-mile-an-hour winds, and this is much closer to the radar, so we're looking down lower. So it's very likely that there's going to be quite a bit of wind damage with these storms as they move through central Indiana, and we'll likely see, as we mentioned, an increasing risk of embedded tornadoes as it moves farther to the east toward the Fort Wayne and Muncie areas, but especially the tornado risk, especially up here in the Fort Wayne area and up toward Toledo and even into southeastern lower Michigan. So I also want to talk just real quickly about back farther to the west here. We still do have the remnants of these supercells that moved through central Illinois. They don't look quite as organized as they did earlier, but let's get the latest data here from the Chicago radar, but they still need to be monitored as they move up here toward northwestern Indiana. You can see here off the Chicago radar looking to the east of Chicago. I don't know why I did that there. Let's see, we got a bad velocity image there. You can see how strong the rotation is even within this line. You can actually see this like little curly Q of in the reflectivity data showing where the storms are really wrapping up. And the Storm Prediction Center was talking in their most recent discussion about a potential enhanced risk of tornadic activity here across northern Indiana and into Northwest Ohio associated with this kind of enhanced spin within the line of storms. So bottom line, we're going to be watching here for increased wind damage potential and embedded tornadoes as we go across, as this line continues to move across Indiana, Western Ohio, Southeastern Lower Michigan. And we'll keep an eye on the supercells as they move into Northeastern Illinois and Northwestern Indiana. So next up, I want to talk some about the other big weather story today, which is Hurricane Erick. Let's look at a visible satellite loop here with regard to Hurricane Erick. And you can see that it's moving slowly to the northwest. And you can see very clearly now in the visible satellite image that this, the eye, as it rotates around and moves northwest toward the coast of Mexico. If we look at the infrared picture from the GOES satellite, we can really see on the east side of the eye, these very cold cloud tops are wrapping around the center. To be looking for intensification, we're looking for cold cloud tops to be wrapping around the center, as well as the eye here to be getting increasingly warm. And through the day today, we've seen signs of both of those things happening, although it does look like the eye is not quite as warm now as it was earlier in the day. There's not a reconnaissance flight in there now. The last pass of the reconnaissance aircraft from the Air Force Hurricane Hunters showed that it had intensified up to 100-mile-an-hour Category 2 hurricane. We're basically expecting that it's going to continue to intensify pretty much up to the coast and likely become at least a major Category 3 hurricane before landfall. It's a fairly small hurricane, especially in comparison to some of the larger hurricanes we've seen striking the U.S. in recent years. But obviously, it's going to have major impacts along the coast where it makes landfall. Currently, the Hurricane Center is forecasting it here. If we look at the key messages from the Hurricane Center, it's forecasting it to come in as a major hurricane to the east of Acapulco. Overall, the models are in pretty good agreement with the path of the storm, and it's a pretty straightforward steering pattern. Having said that, I will say that I've been looking, I made a post earlier in the week or late last week, time flies, I can't remember now exactly when it was, about the new Google AI model that's being developed in collaboration with the National Hurricane Center and some international partners that Google has been working on the last few years, the last several months, and has shown some skill rerunning it on data from the past couple of years. And it is interesting to me that if we look at what the Google model is showing in comparison to the European model, which is kind of the gold standard for track modeling in the global weather models, you can see that it's actually showing a track a bit to the east of what both the Hurricane Center and the European model forecast is showing. It actually shows it coming in a little to the east, closer to Puerto Escondido, than the European model, which is showing a track more up toward Acapulco, although far enough east of Acapulco that given that Acapulco will be on the west or weaker side of the storm, it shouldn't have as much impact in Acapulco as it will areas here to the east and closer to Puerto Escondido. So regardless, it'll be interesting from my perspective as a meteorologist to see whether or not the track ends up being a little closer to the east, closer to the AI track, or whether the usual global physical models we look at end up being more accurate. But regardless, there's going to be significant impacts here in this region between Acapulco and Puerto Escondido, with significant storm surge of several feet anticipated, along with wind gusts well over 100 miles an hour, assuming it makes Category 3 makes landfalls a Category 3. We would expect really extensive wind damage very near the center where the eye wall passes across the coast, and significant surge just to the east of that, along with very heavy rainfall, especially as the storm is going to be interacting with the mountainous terrain of southern Mexico. So very dangerous mudslides and flash floods are anticipated in this region as the storm moves further inland on Thursday and into Friday. And once it moves inland, it should weaken very rapidly. It's moving over very rough terrain, which is very destructive to tropical cyclones. And we would expect it'll weaken pretty quickly, although it does look like it's going to enhance rainfall well up into southern Mexico, and potentially even kind of help enhance southeast winds off of the Gulf of Mexico, and potentially cause some heavier rain even on the Gulf side of the Gulf Coast of Mexico. So the last thing I want to talk about here is, well, here real quick before I leave Eric, this is the reconnaissance aircraft observations from Erick, and it was interesting. And I was doing a live chat when the reconnaissance flight was in there. This was when the Hurricane Hunter aircraft was flying from the southwest to the northeast side of the hurricane. And interestingly enough, it actually found the stronger surface winds on the southwest side of the eye, which is unusual. It found the stronger winds at flight level, which it was coming in at about 10,000 feet above the ocean on the northeast side, which is where you would typically expect it. So I'm not quite sure what was going on there, but regardless, the 95 knot flight level winds and the 90 knot winds estimated by the step frequency microwave radiometer, which is the equipment on the airplane that enables the airplane to measure the surface winds by looking at the ocean and how the wave action is going on in the ocean. Basically, both of those combined, the flight level winds and the SFR winds, supported the hurricane center increasing intensity to Category 2, 100 miles an hour. So the last thing I just want to talk about real quickly is the anticipated heat that looks to be coming up in the eastern U.S. over the next several days, especially starting later in the week and then into the weekend. And I want to take a look at the European ensemble model here. And let's see, up here, and we'll look at the 500 millibar pattern. And so when we look at 500 millibars, we're looking at about 18,000 feet. And that's kind of the level where meteorologists look to kind of gauge what the mid and upper level weather pattern is. And we can see, if we look at, this is for this evening, and we can see, sorry, I got a dog scratching under me here. We can see the upper level, now he's hacking. Live television. So we've got the upper level system that's causing the severe weather over the Midwest, and That system is forecast to move to the east coast tomorrow and cause another potential active severe weather day along the eastern seaboard. And then that system moves off to the east, and we have a new upper level system that starts to come into the southwest, or excuse me, into the west coast, which will help erode some of the extensive heat that's been going on in the southwestern U.S. Both today and tomorrow, expecting 110 plus to be widespread in the southwest again the next couple of days. But this system will kind of take the edge off of that for a few days. But while that's happening in the west, we expect to see this really intense area of mid and upper level high pressure develop over the eastern United States. And this forecast is for Monday afternoon, and we are showing well above normal 500 millibar heights here across the northeastern United States. The values here of the upper level height, which is essentially like pressure on a surface weather map, but we're looking at 18,000 feet. These values here approaching 6,000 meters. That is a really unusually strong high pressure system. And basically when you have this kind of this kind of high pressure in mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, you have a lot of sinking motion under it. And that's what kind of builds this heat dome, which is what we're anticipating seeing coming into the eastern United States late this week into early next week. And you can see here, these are the low level temperatures, the low level temperature anomaly. And we're looking at anywhere from 7 to 10 degrees Celsius above normal across the mid-Atlantic, Great Lakes, and Northeast. So we're looking at really significant heat potential for the eastern United States. And the other thing is that this looks like it's going to be a rather prolonged event as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday. It starts to break down a little bit, but still you can see this heat dome is pretty locked in. Even though it weakens somewhat, we would still expect well above normal temperatures to persist into much of next week, especially across the mid-Atlantic, southeast states. So I'm going to finish off here by showing what the National Weather Service is showing as far as their current heat graphics. And we see here for the maximum daily heat risk, and their heat risk takes into account not only the hottest temperature or the high temperatures during the day, it also takes into account the lack of cooling off at night. In other words, how warm are the overnight lows going to stay, and then of course the humidity, the heat index values. And you can see here showing extreme heat risk Friday into Sunday across the Midwest, including Chicago, Milwaukee, Des Moines area, with major heat risk in an expansive area surrounding this across much of the Great Lakes. And then as we go into Monday and Tuesday, you can see this extreme heat expands to cover much of the southern Great Lakes region into the mid-Atlantic, including the New York City and Washington, D.C. areas. So obviously I'll be giving more details on this as we go through the Balanced Weather newsletters the next couple days with some additional live briefings. But bottom line is we're expecting really extensive, very dangerous heat for much of the Midwest and into the eastern United States for several days, starting Friday and going into the early and middle part of next week. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up. I've been talking for almost 25 minutes. You all got to experience our dog Spike virtually there for a few minutes. I hope this was helpful, and we'll be doing more of these as we go through this active period of severe weather, hurricane landfalls, and excessive heat. Thanks for being a Balanced Weather subscriber, and we'll talk to you all soon.